Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a world of, well, incredible ambition, cutting-edge technology, and frankly, staggering complexity. We're talking about AAA game development. Those massive high-stakes projects that really define the gaming landscape, sometimes for better, sometimes maybe for worse.
Exactly. It's where, the art and the engineering collide on just an epic scale. And to really understand what goes into building these digital worlds, we've gone through quite a stack of sources,
Right.
pulling insights from industry vets, academic studies, deep dives into specific companies like Ubisoft, and practical guides on actually managing these colossal projects.
So our mission today is to really get under the hood, unpack the significant hurdles involved in creating these blockbuster games, and explore how major players like Ubisoft, for instance, navigate that minefield. We're going from the grand vision way down to the nitty-gritty of production pipelines and, the vital, often unseen work of quality control. So let's ground ourselves first. What exactly is a AAA game? I mean, think of it as the gaming equivalent of a Hollywood mega-budget film, right?
Yeah, high budget, high profile. These come from the major studios, the ones with vast resources. They employ teams that can number in the hundreds, sometimes, honestly, even 1,000 people or more.
Wow.
And they're developed over years, often pushing the absolute limits of technology, state-of-the-art graphics, expansive worlds, really intricate stories, and highly polished gameplay experiences.
You know the names, right? Games like The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2,
The Assassin's Creed series.
Call of Duty titles,
Yeah.
These are the ones that capture that mainstream attention.
And they're absolutely critical to the industry ecosystem. They set benchmarks technically and creatively. They generate massive revenue, which, fuels further development right across the industry. They elevate gaming in the public eye, often talked about as significant cultural artifacts.
Right.
And importantly, the tech and the methodologies developed for these giants, they often filter down, influencing the tools and techniques used by smaller studios too.
Okay, so the stakes are high, the scale is massive. That sounds, well, challenging, to put it mildly. Where do the sources say the biggest obstacles lie in building something of this magnitude?
Well, the sheer scale itself is kind of the root of many problems. On the technical front, creating those cutting-edge graphics isn't just about artistic talent.
Right.
It's about making them run, ensuring performance across a huge range of hardware, different PCs, different console generations. That takes incredibly complex, constant optimization work.
Yeah, it's not like you just do it once.
No, not at all. It's embedded throughout the whole development cycle.
And if you're building a game with any kind of online component, forget it.
Oh, yeah.
You need rock-solid network infrastructure, reliable servers for millions of players, matchmaking that actually works.
And keeping latency, that delay, between button press and action, keeping that low globally, that's a dedicated engineering discipline all on its own. It's huge. Then, of course, the budgets. They are just astronomical, easily tens, often hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow, and that money goes into...
Those huge teams, years of development time, expensive tech licenses, massive marketing campaigns.
Which means incredibly high financial risk.
Exactly. Every single decision about features, resources, even the release date, it gets weighed against that huge investment. The need to secure funding and meet investor expectations, that can put immense pressure on creative choices, sometimes forcing, compromises.
Which brings us to time, the time constraints.
Yeah, the time crunch. These are multi-year development cycles, sometimes 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
Keeping hundreds of people motivated, focused, and aligned on a single vision for that long. That's a profound management challenge.
And hitting the right market window is just make or break, isn't it?
Absolutely. You have to time your release around competitor launches, seasonal sales peaks, industry trends.
In this unforgiving schedule, well, that's a major driver of the notorious crunch time. Those periods of intense, often unsustainable overtime leading up to deadlines.
And as the sources really highlight, crunch isn't just about long hours. It leads to burnout, health issues, high staff turnover.
Yeah.
Finding ways to balance hitting these immovable deadlines with fostering a healthy, sustainable work environment is maybe one of the most persistent and difficult challenges in the whole industry.
So, moving to the creative side.
Yeah.
How do you innovate without alienating the fan base? Especially with these huge established franchises. Like, how do you push boundaries but still make it feel like the game players originally fell in love with?
That balance between innovation and familiarity is incredibly delicate. It really is, particularly for sequels or games within a beloved universe. It requires this deep understanding of player expectations while still, daring to try new things.
Hmm.
On top of that, developing genuinely compelling stories and maintaining narrative coherence in these vast open world games, especially with branching paths, that's monumentally difficult.
And keeping a consistent artistic vision across hundreds of artists, designers, writers, often working in different studios around the world.
Yeah, that's incredibly complex coordination.
Speaking of coordination, wrangling those hundreds of people,
Yeah.
often spread across different continents and time zones, that
Yeah.
sounds like a major organizational hurdle in itself.
Oh, absolutely. Effective communication is just paramount.
Right.
Sophisticated workflow management, conflict resolution.
Yeah.
This is where dedicated project management really comes in, not just as logistics, but as the crucial framework for making this, frankly, chaotic process manageable.
Oh,
You
wow.
need robust collaboration tools, project tracking software like Jira, communication platforms like Slack or Discord, version control like Perforce or Git.
And the teams need constant training just to use them effectively, right?
Yeah.
Adapting all the time.
Exactly. And none of that works without strong leadership to guide the whole thing, set clear goals, and build a supportive environment where people actually feel empowered to voice concerns or suggest solutions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even when you think you've beat the game, the battle isn't over. Quality assurance and bug fixing on this scale, it's a monumental task.
I bet. A game with millions of lines of code, interacting systems, dynamic environments.
Yeah.
It just presents an almost infinite number of potential bugs and performance issues.
So meeting those high standards players expect requires exhaustive testing, finding and fixing bugs, optimizing performance across every single supported piece of hardware, all while the game is still being developed and changed.
It's a constant, complex balancing act.
Definitely. And in the age of live games, post-launch support isn't just bug fixing anymore.
Right.
It's providing critical patches, performance updates, new content, all to maintain stability and keep millions of players engaged and happy over months or even years.
And connecting with the community is also, well, non-negotiable now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Building that relationship through clear communication, actively listening to feedback.
It's vital. But the challenge lies in integrating that feedback constructively.
Yeah.
How do you use player input to improve the game without getting pulled in too many directions or, losing the original creative vision?
Yeah, tricky.
Transparency about development progress, challenges, changes. That becomes key to managing expectations and building trust.
And let's not forget, the industry is like a constant arms race of technology.
Totally. You have to stay on the bleeding edge, integrating new tools, new platforms, even entirely new paradigms like ray tracing or advanced AI.
Which means your teams need constant training and upskilling.
Right. And it's a tricky balance, adopting promising new tech while ensuring it doesn't destabilize the massive, complex game you're building or negatively impact performance.
Then you've got layers of legal and regulatory challenges. Protecting your core ideas, the intellectual property.
Copyrights, trademarks, patents, that's critical. While meticulously avoiding infringing on anyone else's IP, it's a minefield.
Plus, releasing globally means complying with diverse laws everywhere. Age ratings, data privacy like GDPR, content restrictions that vary wildly by country.
And the licensing landscape is incredibly complex. Game engine tech, middleware, licensed music, it all needs negotiating and managing.
And because these games are global products from day one, you absolutely have to think about cultural sensitivity.
Crucial. Avoid alienating or offending players in different parts of the world.
And localization, that's more than just translation, right?
Much more. It's adapting text, voice acting, cultural references, even UI elements, so the game resonates authentically worldwide. Understanding and adapting to regional market differences, preferences, payment methods, regulations is essential for global success.
And finally, this whole rise of post-launch monetization. That adds another massive layer of complexity to everything.
Oh yeah. Balancing things like microtransactions, cosmetics, DLC with player satisfaction is crucial. You have to offer value players feel good about.
Without disrupting the core gameplay or creating that dreaded pay-to-win perception.
Exactly. Subscription models, game as a service, they require robust plans for a constant stream of new content to keep players engaged and subscribed.
And integrating ads, if you do it, has to be done so carefully.
Extremely carefully. Avoid breaking immersion. All these strategies rely on maintaining long-term player engagement through continuous updates, which feeds right back into needing dedicated live ops teams and processes from the start.
Wow. It sounds like a constantly spinning plate act with countless ways things can go wrong. So how does a company known for making these huge open-world live service games like Ubisoft, how
Yeah.
do they even try to manage this incredible complexity? The sources gave us some fascinating insights there.
Yeah, Ubisoft is a massive publisher, and their strategy, it seems, has been focused on expanding their key franchises into entire connected universes, aiming to make their games feel less like one-off products and more like ongoing experiences, almost like a cultural series.
Their stated brand positioning, according to the material, is, we create worlds for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
They aim for high-quality games that aren't just fun, but allow players to learn and grow. The Discovery Tour modes in Assassin's Creed are a brilliant example of this, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Turning those detailed historical settings into educational experiences separate from the main game. It's quite unique.
And they leverage integrated marketing across basically every channel imaginable.
Functional websites for sales, loyalty programs, YouTube for trailers, gameplay videos, live streams, social media like Twitter for direct interaction, building hype with hashtags, sharing funny content,
Yeah.
trying to connect personally.
Yeah. Now, the Assassin's Creed Mythology trilogy, that's Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, that's a really telling case study from the sources.
Commercially, yeah, undeniable successes. They hit record sales numbers for the franchise. Huge.
Yet, despite that huge commercial win, they faced significant criticism from some players and critics.
Right. Points included a perceived homogeneity between the three games.
Like they felt too similar.
Yeah, and a feeling of repetitive open-world busywork, frequent technical glitches even after launch, and this big design shift away from the traditional stealth parkour core of Assassin's Creed towards deeper RPG mechanics.
Which even led to that somewhat harsh canned factory nickname among some players.
Yeah, suggesting a standardized, mass-produced feel. Their target audience strategy was explicitly wide, aiming for everyone, drilling down to demographics like, say, men 18-24 in urban areas.
And this is where the trade-off became apparent, according to the sources.
Yep.
By trying to appeal to everyone and expanding the gameplay so broadly.
They potentially diluted what the core Assassin's Creed fans loved most about the earlier games, that precise focus on assassination, parkour, stealth puzzles.
Right. One suggestion highlighted in the material was that sometimes aiming for depth and a more specific taste might lead to a more beloved game, even if not necessarily record-breaking for that dedicated audience.
Makes sense. Looking at how Ubisoft builds these games, the sources describe it as iterative and highly collaborative. It breaks down into distinct phases: conception, core vision, prototypes, pre-production tools, processes finalized, production, the long haul, assets and code, and operations handling the post-launch life.
And within that, they use key milestones to track progress. The first playable, that early prototype.
Yeah, demonstrating the core design loop. Then a vertical slice is crucial. It's a small, polished section built to the final quality standards, often used to show publishers or stakeholders the potential.
Right.
Then you have alpha, all major features in, but rough. Beta, feature complete, focus shifts intensely to polishing and testing. And finally, master the final version, approved for release.
And a huge shift for Ubisoft, explicitly noted in the sources, has been embracing the live game model.
Big time. Player activity in their games apparently doubled when they pivoted to this, making live operations an integral part of every single development step, not just something tacked on after launch.
So that demands faster content pipelines.
Heavily automated tools for testing and deployment, scalable online infrastructure, embedding support staff and live ops expertise right within the dev teams from day one. It's a fundamental change.
And they actively involve the community.
Right.
Like with test servers for the Division or...
Yeah, or the R6 Fix platform for Rainbow Six Siege, getting that rapid feedback right into the development loop.
And you can really see this commitment to live service and community feedback in their detailed roadmaps. The sources mentioned the AC Shadows roadmap,
Yeah, outlining specific plans stretching way into the future.
detailing free updates for stability, balance, immersion options, new difficulty modes, new game plus Buddia, even new quests or collaborations.
And specifying paid expansions, like Claws of Awaji, adding new regions, abilities. They talk about story drops, parkour updates, photo mode features.
And crucially, updates directly driven by community feedback. Things like toggling gear in cutscenes or disabling certain visual effects. They're explicitly building in responses to player requests.
It truly highlights how embedded community feedback and post-launch evolution have become.
Yeah.
And underpinning all of this is quality control. which at Ubisoft is described as far more than just bug testing.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic, multifaceted role, focusing on strategy, capability building, and ensuring the game actually enriches player lives.
Their QC teams are enormous, apparently, not just standard testers.
No, specialists for networking, platform compatibility, and increasingly, technical profiles focused on automation, data analytics, R&D for using AML in testing.
Right.
Even gameplay mechanics experts who deeply understand how systems interact.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating and key to their approach is that many of these QC team members are avid gamers themselves.
So they bring that end-user perspective.
Exactly. Something purely technical testing can't capture. It's a different beast than traditional IT quality control.
How so?
Well, IT might test if a business app correctly processes data, a functional check. Game QC tests not just function, but the player experience. Does it feel good? Is it fun? Is it frustrating? Does it evoke the intended emotion?
Gotcha. So it requires that blend of technical skill, strategic thinking for prioritizing, and leadership for the huge teams.
Absolutely. And keeping such large QC teams motivated relies heavily on clear communication, a positive environment, growth opportunities, and really empowering them because their feedback is genuinely valued.
So you've got the massive technical and creative challenges, the huge distributed teams, the complex live service model, dedicated QC. But how do you actually keep it all on track day to day? This is where that essential role of project management comes in. And it's not just administrative logistics.
Not at all. Project management, especially in a creative field like this, is fundamentally about creating a realistic plan to achieve complex goals within defined timeframes and budgets. It's about understanding the work involved, breaking it down, assigning it effectively, and tracking progress. Simple to say, hard to do.
Why is that so vital when you're building something as fluid and creative as a game? Seems almost counterintuitive sometimes.
Because without a clear plan, you quickly spiral. PM ensures that the ambitious designs from the creative teams can actually be built with the available resources and time. It prevents crucial features from being forgotten or falling through the cracks. It provides the structure needed for those large distributed teams to actually collaborate effectively towards common goals.
And the sources really emphasize the human element here. Listening to teammates actually doing the work.
Yeah, the people on the ground. Trusting your instincts about what's truly achievable and absolutely always having backup plans.
Because things never go perfectly to plan.
Never.
Right.
The sources touched on examples like Telltale Games, where the lack of sustainable planning and process coupled with that over-reliance on brutal crunch. Well, it ultimately highlighted the critical link between having a functional plan and genuinely valuing the people executing it.
And game development isn't linear, it's iterative. Build, test, feedback, revise, build again.
Exactly, which is why methodologies like Agile, Scrum, Kanban are so relevant. They provide flexible frameworks designed to manage that complexity and embrace the need for adaptation based on feedback and discovery during development.
And tools are crucial for tracking this, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Gantt charts for the high-level visual timeline, digital boards like Trello or Asana for teams tracking individual tasks within shorter cycles or sprints.
And the language of project management gives everyone a common framework. Milestones, those big stages like alpha or beta.
Tasks the smaller goals, building up to milestones. Scope the overall size and features. A sprint, that short fixed period, maybe 2 weeks, for focused work. The backlog, the master list of everything.
Constraints, the unchangeable factors like budget, release date, platforms.
Contingency plan, your backup when things go wrong. And a post-mortem, that vital review after a milestone or project to learn what worked and what didn't.
So the planning process starts big picture, but you have to drill down. Set realistic, specific, maybe even modest milestones initially.
Right. Break those down into smaller, manageable tasks. And importantly, set clear internal due dates for those tasks that build in buffer time.
Buffer time.
Yeah, you need time not just to create an asset, but to actually implement it into the game engine, test it, make sure it works with everything else. It always takes longer than you think.
Okay. So we've taken quite the deep dive into the immense scale, the technical hurdles, financial pressures, creative tightropes of AAA game development. We've seen how coordinating these massive distributed teams and maintaining quality under pressure requires really robust processes and dedicated talent.
We looked at Ubisoft as a case study, highlighting their strategic focus on expanding franchises and really embracing that live game model. And we used the Assassin's Creed Mythology trilogy as an example, achieving huge commercial success, yes, but also facing valid criticism about the trade-offs involved in trying to appeal to the broadest possible audience, and maybe the importance of focus sometimes.
And we've seen the absolutely crucial roles of project management, providing structure to navigate complexity iteratively, and quality control, which is this dynamic discipline focused not just on function, but the player experience in these incredibly complex digital worlds.
Yeah.
And that shift towards live games and deeply integrating player feedback seems to be fundamentally changing how these projects are managed, developed, and supported over their entire lifespan.
It's clear that making a AAA game is an incredibly challenging, high-wire act. It requires immense skill across countless disciplines, constant collaboration, adaptability, and a willingness to constantly evolve the approach, especially as games become these living, breathing services.
Which leaves us with this thought for you, the listener, to consider. If these massive AAA games are increasingly defined by continuous post-launch support, if developers are actively integrating community feedback during the development process itself, and if their roadmaps stretch years into the future with planned content, how does that fundamental shift change the very idea of a game ever truly being finished?